Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new video. So as I'm sure most of you know, Aurelion has been announced by Riot. I've personally released several gameplays of him, other YouTubers have as well, and I'm sure most of you have seen at least some of them. So I believe it is safe to say that the majority of you know what this champion really does and how this champion looks. But since most of you probably haven't had the chance to play him yet, unless you have a PBE account, well, it's kind of hard to really judge a champion's strength. So I'm sure even by now, most of you are still wondering just how strong is Aurelion Sol. Is he the next broken champion? Is he just flat out underpowered? Where does he stand? Think of this as essentially being my first impressions of the champion. I'll give you guys my thoughts on him, what I think he's gonna be like, how strong he is, and if I think he's overpowered or underpowered. And once Aurelion Sol makes his way to the live service, I will then make another how to play guide type video for this champion. So very quickly, the question of the video, what do you think so far of Aurelion Sol? And if you end up enjoying this video guys, don't forget to hit that like button. So without further ado, let's start talking about Aurelion Sol. So the way Aurelion Sol looks in game, just from pure aesthetics and his splash art, well, it's safe to say he looks absolutely beautiful. But at the end of the day, honestly, who cares? We want to know how strong he is. So when it comes to playing this champion, for the most part, he's really not that difficult. I would definitely say he's on the easier side of things. He doesn't have a whole lot of mechanics required to utilize his kit properly. He doesn't have a lot of outplay potential, and he is fairly immobile other than your E ability being able to just fly across walls. He's not a 1v1 dueling type champion that'll split push and tries to make some really cool outplays happen. From so far what I have understood, his playstyle revolves around team fights, and that's where he really shines. Having the constant damage output coming out from his passive combined with his W and his Q being able to AoE stun targets for 2 seconds, well, he is gonna be very strong there. So let's quickly talk about each of his abilities and I'll give you guys my thoughts on them. So at first, when looking at his passive, I was a little let down because I thought it was just way too simple and you can't really do anything impressive with it. And even after playing him for several games, I still have to say that is a little true. However, it is nowhere near as weak as I thought it would be. The fact that these 3 stars are always orbiting around you, and for the most part this is free damage that doesn't cost any mana or resources, it's actually quite strong. And what made this even better to me is how surprisingly well it scales into late game and how ridiculously annoying and stupid it is with Rylai's Crystal Scepter. Activating your W to make them go to his outer ring, so essentially you can hit people with the passive from a much farther distance with Rylai's, is the most annoying thing to deal with if you're facing Aurelion Sol. However, the one thing that I really don't like about his passive, and technically his W as well, is the fact that if you're standing in a bush, your rings that are flying around you will not be hidden. So if the enemy champion has vision right beside the bush that you're in, they're gonna be seeing those things flying around you and they'll obviously know that you're sitting in there. Now, I'm not sure if Riot plans to change this or they plan to keep it the same way, but this is somewhat poor because it makes it very difficult for Aurelion Sol to take advantage of the bushes. And I think we can all agree that while hiding in bushes and waiting to flank someone is a very core gameplay component of League of Legends. But this also applies to the Fog of War, so the best and easiest way to think about it is like this. Pretend like those 3 mini stars flying around Aurelion Sol are also champions, so if you can see the champion from where that star is, you're gonna be seeing the star as well. Other than that, however, I think his passive is not only somewhat of a simple mechanic, but it is also very, very strong and it scales surprisingly well. So when a teamfight finally does happen, chances are you have a pretty decent mana pool, maybe you even have a blue buff, and you can have the W on for quite some time. And the stars constantly flying through teamfights is gonna be so annoying for the enemy to deal with that it's gonna add the damage over and over and over. So maybe hitting 1 star on one of the enemy champions isn't the biggest thing in the world, but hitting 2, 3, and maybe even 4, it'll all add up and it'll start hurting. But then we have his Q, which I have to say, in my opinion, is the best ability in his kit. Theoretically, this thing can take up the whole map, but obviously the map simply is not big enough for you to get it to that size. But there are many ways to make this ability work, especially with the synergy on your E ability to make it big enough to the point where you can probably hit at least 3 champions in a team fight. But the thing about this ability is, well, not only is the damage on it quite strong, but you also have a 2-second AoE stun on a fairly low cooldown. And for the most part, this ability sets up so many things within your kit, whether it's just for for the lane harass, to stun, auto attack, activate the W for the long range auto attack as well. Use it to start up an ultimate, maybe engage with your E. It has so many uses and it is without question absolutely core within his kit. We already talked about his W a bit when talking about his passive, but one more thing I want to add or touch to this is once you activate the W and you're going in for maybe the harass, the range on the outer ring or when the W is on is pretty much the exact same range as your auto attacks at max range. So when it comes to harassing someone, using your combo on them, this is very important to remember. His E ability does seem quite nice, but it's nothing completely crazy. I mean, yeah, when it comes to ganking from mid lane, going top, maybe bottom somewhere in the jungle, or when it comes to going back from base to lane, it is very useful. The little bit of move speed it provides when moving in the same direction is also quite nice. But at the end of the day, this ability doesn't really offer you anything in a team fight, so not only are you missing some kind of utility in a team fight, but you're also missing some damage. So again, when roaming, maybe trying to make plays elsewhere, or trying to go back to the lane, or initiating a team fight or a catch with your Q, the E ability is quite nice. But other than that, it's just simply okay. And the final thing is his ultimate, and I have to say, it is a little lackluster. When I saw this ultimate for the very first time in Riot's reveal, I thought it was very lackluster there as well, but I thought, you know what, maybe when you actually play it, it's not too bad. And well, after playing several games, I still have to say I expected a little bit more. Now don't get me wrong, when combined with everything else in his kit, the ultimate is quite useful. It synergizes decently, pushing people away, pushing them to the outer ring. It is nice. The slow helps you land your Q, it works. But what I'm trying to say is, well, for a champion like Aurelion Sol, who's some maker of the galaxies, who controls stars, and who seems essentially like a god, I was hoping it'll be something a bit more interesting. The damage on his ultimate honestly isn't anything to brag about, and it really feels like his Q does almost the same damage. So when it comes to pushing people away or putting them into your outer ring of your W, or just slowing them for your team to initiate, it's actually not that bad, and for the most part there are quite a bit of uses. I just wish the ultimate was a little bit more epic. So all in all, the playstyle of Aurelion Sol will be somewhat similar to Anivia, except he does have a little bit more mobility, all thanks to his E. But his Q is very similar to Anivia's Q, and in terms of just how slow he feels with his base move speed, well, again, it's pretty similar to Anivia. So all in all, my final thoughts on Aurelion Sol so far: he is a strong champion. Do I think he's overpowered and broken? No, I actually don't. And I know that may come as a surprise to some of you because I'm known to call pretty much everything overpowered, but I honestly don't think he is. But that's not to say that that's a bad thing. Now, when I say overpowered, so I thought Jhin was overpowered when he was on the PvE, because Jhin is one of those champions, if you get ahead, you are going to be pretty damn strong. But on the flip side, if Jhin were to get behind, he is going to be very, very useless. Now, Aurelion Sol is pretty much the opposite. So if Aurelion Sol gets ahead, he will obviously be very strong, but not to the point where he's just flat out broken. But at the same side, if Aurelion Sol were to fall behind a bit, well, he is still going to be fairly useful. I mean, he'll still have the Q stun, he'll still have the QE engage. His ultimate will still do decent damage with the slow to help your team. His passive will still do consistent damage as well, especially if you have Rallies and the slow. He just seems like a very well-rounded champion to the point where he'll be useful in almost any scenario, no matter how far ahead or maybe even how far behind you are. So all in all, I think he's a strong champion. I do not think he's underpowered, nor do I think he's overpowered, nor do I think he's just simply in the middle balance. I would say he's right in between being a very okay champion and balanced to being an overpowered champion. But that is about it for this video, guys. Those are my initial impressions of Aurelion Sol, our first true dragon champion. Once he's finally out, I will have a guide on how to play video released. But other than that, definitely let me know down below what you think of this champion so far. If you enjoyed the video, please definitely hit that like button to show your support. I'd really much appreciate it, and if we can get 7,000 likes, I'd be so happy about that. Make sure to share the video, subscribe if you haven't, check out the other videos, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.